Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we start, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been subscribing and supporting the channel. It genuinely means a lot, and it helps me keep improving and bringing more interesting stories, discoveries, and real-world connections to you, and building this into a great community together. You mean a lot. That said, let's get into today's video. Today, I've brought you something slightly different. You know those most intriguing parts of Harry Potter, the Horcruxes, story of the Master of Death, the Dementors, and the Patronus charm. What if I told you that they aren't just pure fantasy? Not in the way most people think. These ideas were shaped into a fictional story, yes, but their origins reach far beyond just a fairy tale. They're built on older concepts, beliefs, and practices that existed in our ancient world long before the story was ever written. So let's start with one of the most interesting ones, the Horcruxes. When we look at Horcruxes, the idea doesn't appear out of nowhere. It connects to a pattern found across multiple older belief systems where human life or identity is not treated as fully contained inside the body. In European folklore, this is most clearly seen in what scholars of mythology call the external soul motif. In these stories, recorded in comparative folklore studies such as James Fraser's The Golden Bough, a person's life force is hidden in a separate object, commonly an egg, a box, or a hidden container. The structure is consistent. The person cannot be killed unless that external object is found and destroyed. Also in ancient Egyptian religion, the self was divided into multiple components, most notably the Ka and the Ba. The Ka represents life force, the vital essence. It was believed to be the part of a human that represents life energy and sustains existence. After death, the Ka was thought to continue existing and required offerings, like food and drink, to be maintained in the afterlife. Ba represents personality and individuality. It was believed to be the part of the self that could move between the world of the living and the afterlife, often shown in Egyptian art as a bird with a human head. After death, the Ba would reunite with the Ka for the person to exist fully in the afterlife. Survival in the afterlife depended on the preservation of these elements through rituals such as mummification and offerings, reflecting a belief system where identity was not a single unified entity, but something composed of multiple parts that could continue after death in different forms. Even in later medieval European magical traditions, especially in old grimoires from the Middle Ages and Renaissance period, there are ideas about using symbols, rituals, and objects to influence a person's life or spiritual state. Some of these texts suggest that parts of a person's existence, like their protection, fate, or life force, could be linked or affected through external items such as written seals or ritual objects. Although these writings are not proven systems and differ in reliability, they reflect a common belief in early occult traditions that human life and spiritual essence could be connected to objects through ritual practice. This helped shape a wider set of ideas in medieval thought about protection, life extension, and spiritual binding through physical objects. So across all of these ancient systems, the common structure is not literal soul-splitting, but the recurring idea that life or essence can be preserved, separated, or protected beyond the physical body. When you look at these patterns across history, they start to form a consistent idea about how the ancients believed that there's life and identity beyond just the physical body.
To rip the soul into 7 pieces.
These ideas appear in different cultures and religions in different forms, but they keep circling the same structure. And when that structure is viewed as a whole, it becomes easier to see how it could be shaped into a single unified concept in modern storytelling. And most likely that structural idea is what was later reshaped into the fictional concept of Horcruxes in Harry Potter. All right. Next, let's find out how the idea of Master of Death came into existence. In Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows are 3 legendary magical objects: the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak. According to the story, when someone possesses all 3, they are known as the Master of Death. This doesn't mean they literally control death. but rather that they hold the most powerful combination of magical artifacts tied to power, life, and survival within the wizarding world. When you break down each of the Deathly Hallows, they begin to reflect deeper patterns that exist in human life rather than just magical objects. The Elder Wand represents the idea of power and influence. Across human history, authority has rarely been about physical strength alone. It has often been represented through symbolic objects: crowns, scepters, staff, and ceremonial weapons carried by rulers, kings, emperors, and religious leaders. These objects functioned as visible signs of control, legitimacy, and hierarchy, shaping how societies recognized authority. But history also shows a repeating pattern. When power becomes something that is pursued for its own sake, or when it is used without restraint, it tends to become unstable. Leadership built only on dominance or ambition often collapses into conflict, destruction, or internal struggle. In that sense, the Elder Wand reflects not just power itself, but the human tendency to seek control beyond limits, and the consequences that follow when that balance is lost. The Resurrection Stone reflects something even more deeply rooted in human experience: grief and attachment. Across cultures and time periods, people have consistently struggled with the finality of death. This appears in rituals of remembrance, ancestral traditions, burial practices, and belief systems that maintain symbolic or spiritual connections with the deceased. Even in everyday life, memory itself becomes a way of keeping the past present. But alongside this, there is also a tension. The desire to remain connected can sometimes become overwhelming, leading to refusal, denial, or emotional dependence on what has already been lost. It reflects a universal human conflict between accepting loss and resisting it. In that way, the Resurrection Stone represents not just memory, but the emotional weight of not being able to let go. And the Invisibility Cloak represents a very different response to existence. Instead of pursuing power or holding on to attachment, it reflects withdrawal from visibility, status, and control. Across myth and philosophy, there are recurring ideas of living outside recognition, choosing humility over dominance, simplicity over influence, and detachment over control. Invisibility, in symbolic terms, often represents safety from judgment, freedom from conflict, or escape from systems of power altogether. It can also reflect the idea of living without leaving a forceful impact, and eventually returning to nature or the cycle of life without resistance. Perhaps this is why they were called the Deathly Hallows. The Elder Wand represents the temptation of power, a pursuit that has brought down rulers, kingdoms, and countless individuals throughout history and even today. The Resurrection Stone reflects humanity's struggle to accept loss, a grief so powerful that it can consume a life of its own. And the Invisibility Cloak represents the one person who does not fight the inevitable, but accepts their place in the cycle of life. Different choices, different paths, yet all of them eventually lead to the same destination: death. And like the movie says,
Together, they make one master of death.
whether intentional or not, J.K. Rowling combined several symbolic themes into a single tale, creating a story that feels familiar because the ideas behind it have existed long before Harry Potter was ever written. And then finally, there's the Dementors, and what stands against them: the Patronus. When you look at how these ideas translate into modern psychology, the symbolism becomes even clearer. The Dementor-like state closely resembles experiences described in clinical psychology such as depression or trauma-related distress, where individuals often report emotional numbness, loss of pleasure, and intrusive negative memories that repeatedly surface. In that state, the mind can become dominated by what is called negative cognitive bias, where distressing thoughts feel more accessible and more dominant than positive ones, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. The Patronus, in contrast, reflects a psychological coping mechanism seen in practices like cognitive reframing and memory anchoring, where individuals intentionally focus on meaningful or positive memories to counter intrusive negative thought patterns. It represents the mind's ability to actively redirect attention toward emotionally stabilizing experiences in order to restore balance. When viewed through this lens, the two concepts mirror a real psychological dynamic between emotional breakdown and emotional regulation, where one represents the collapse of mental resilience under negative memory load, and the other represents the active reconstruction of emotional stability through focus, memory, and inner resilience. And in that sense, what looks like a simple battle between creatures in a fictional world begins to reflect something much more familiar in real human experience: the constant balance between what pulls the mind into darkness and what brings it back to clarity. It is this balance that gives the story its lasting impact, because the ideas behind it are not entirely separate from reality, but deeply connected to how people experience emotion, memory, and survival itself. So each of these elements, in their own way, connects back to something deeply familiar in human life: our relationship with memory, emotion, control, and mortality. Like the Horcruxes explore the attempt to escape death by preserving identity beyond the body, the Deathly Hallows reflect different human responses to power, loss, and acceptance. The Dementors and Patronus represent the internal struggle between emotional collapse and emotional recovery. And that is why these ideas feel so natural, even within a fictional world. Because whether intentional or not, stories like this often draw from the same source: the very fabric of human experience itself. And that's it for today's video. Before you go, hit that subscribe button so I can continue to walk you through so many fascinating realities of our world. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.